Good morning all. That was slightly unnecessary, apologies, you're already quieting down. So I'm really happy to see all of you here. It means a lot. We've been working on this for a few weeks now. So basically we're here to talk about why we offer a discount to women to join Makers Academy. Was there anyone that was unaware of this fact until, say, last night? Yeah, okay. Well, that's not bad, that's not bad. Okay, so should we talk about what inspired the talk?
Yeah, so the talk came about when I started. I was asked quite a few times why we had the female discount, and I knew kind of like the original purpose of it, like the general kind of concept behind it, but I didn't specifically know why Makers did it themselves. So I kind of felt like I wasn't totally equipped to answer the question because I didn't make the rules. So I went to Roy and kind of asked what it was about, and Roy kind of decided it was something that we ought to present on. One of the reasons that Roy is here is that white men are typically not penalised for addressing these kind of issues, and quite often if women speak up about them, they're kind of given shit for it basically. So then Roy asked me to be involved because I kind of brought it to him in the first place, and it's something that I'm personally quite interested in. So kind of that's where the talk originally came from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean it's been obviously quite a roller coaster in terms of my involvement, because this is not a subject that I was particularly well versed in at the time. I've absolutely immersed myself in everything the internet has to offer, done lots of research, spoken to lots of women, and I still have no clue. But this is basically the best of the research that we have put together. There's a lot of work has gone into this. Everything has been very well researched, and there is a list of sources at the end for anyone that's interested in finding out more, as well as a list of useful links. So I'll be making the slides public. You can kind of enjoy them at your leisure. So, Makers Academy do indeed offer a discount to women.
So I suppose the first question is why do we do it? And the general gist of it is that because of the distinct lack of women in engineering. So if I were to ask you kind of proportionally what percentage of computer science students in the UK you think are women, roughly figure-wise, any suggestions? It's not too bad, we've got 22.5%. I mean, you say not too bad, but we represent half the population and we're only a quarter of the kind of the students there. Similarly, the UK IT professionals, figures, 17.5% of UK IT professionals are women. And within STEM subjects, does everyone know what STEM subjects are? It's science, technology, engineering, maths, and medicine I think is now in there as well. But 14.4% of UK STEM workforce is women. And I reiterate the point that we do represent 50% of the population. So I guess the next question is why does this imbalance exist?
So there are a few theories. I'd like to talk about some of the more prevalent ones. So the first theory is women aren't interested in engineering. So do we see any women in this room? Right, so we know that's crap, right? Myth. Okay, so why aren't there more? So can everyone see this graph? It's a particularly good graph. I can't take credit for it. It came from a really good podcast on NPR, which is I really recommend listening to it. But basically, you see at this point here, the women's representation in computer science kind of tails off. This actually coincides with when computers were available in the home. So why might that be an issue? This is pretty typical of the marketing for early home PCs. Can anyone give me any observations on this? It looks like the woman's being taught how to do it by the guys. Yeah, she's definitely kind of passively involved at best, right? If you wanted to market, I mean, obviously advertising has come a long way since then, but still in other ways not. So how might you market a product to women or young girls, perhaps?
Pink.
Pink? Okay. Yeah, you're joking, but this is. I have two nieces, and every time I go to buy them a Christmas present, birthday present, this is what I see. in much higher definition. And it's a lot more pink when the projector isn't kind of putting a perfect cast on it. So basically, this is what I associate with a young girl's experience in most toy stores that I've ever been in. Another example of typical early computer marketing. Again, there is a woman in shot, again, passively involved at best. You know, your dad's got the manual, the kid's writing the keyboard. And it kind of goes on in fairly depressing fashion. Does anyone play Jenga? Okay, it's a game about building, right? And you know, I think we all are fairly familiar with the appeal of it. So why does it need to be pink for girls? And why does it need to have comments on it? You can't. This one's kind of blurred, but it actually says name someone you have a crush on right now, because that really enhanced my Jenga experience. Video games, again, the Nintendo. I mean, Mom's not even looking at the screen here. But you know, it's not just home computing. This kind of thing is prevalent everywhere once you start looking for it. Okay, these two books. Can somebody turn off, please? These two books were published in 2012. That's shocking to me. This young lad gets to be Batman, or he did in 1987. But if you're a girl, kind of the best you can look forward to is to train really hard to be Batman's significant other. I think the point here is like, not every little girl is doing
So, one of the second myths about why the imbalance exists, I guess, is that women are less able. And at this point, I kind of invite you to look at your female colleagues and, you know, assess whether that's true. Probably not me, but so there's no consistent evidence that there is a physical difference between the male and female brain. When we think about sort of the physical makeup of brains, there's no sense in talking about the male and female nature. There is no one person that has all the male characteristics and another that has all the female characteristics. Or if they exist, they're really, really hard to find. And maths is often flagged up as an excuse for why women are less able in these kind of fields, that women can't do maths, women don't like maths, not very good at it. But this is not a matter of biology, and none of the findings of this study suggest that there's an innate biological difference between the sexes as the primary reason for a gender gap in math performance. And the math gender gap, where it does occur, is due to socio-cultural factors that differ among countries, and crucially, these are factors that can be changed.
So, yeah. The other theory is tech is a meritocracy. So a meritocracy, for anyone that's not sure, is a system in which ability is the factor in which you're included and promoted throughout the ranks. So in short, if you're able, if you've got talent, you're in. Again, this is a myth. Which was pretty upsetting for me to find out coming into this industry. I figured if I work really hard, it'd be fine. But it's kind of it's a misguided principle. So when men and women made identical startup pitches for more than 500 participants, the men were chosen nearly 70% of the time. And it's not just in the startup world that this bias exists. In music. There was a really innovative practice that was brought in, I think it was around the 60s and 70s, where during auditions, they put a screen up in front of the musician that was auditioning so you couldn't really ascertain anything about their appearance. And these blind auditions increased the likelihood of female musicians being selected for an orchestra by 30%. Across the UK, women learn 24% less than men for doing the same jobs. The intent to be meritocratic is not a myth, but we know what road is paved with good intentions. It's time to apply a heartfelt belief that as engineers we are rational and rationally accept that the data is telling us this isn't a meritocracy and we are all biased. Now, bias is a really, really interesting topic. There's actually a link to a talk by a lady called Janet Crawford. It'll be included at the end of the slides, which talks about unconscious bias and how it affects every single one of us. I saw the talk at Bath Ruby most recently, and it was absolutely illuminating. I really urge you all to check it out. So, yeah, the other thing that we struggle with at Makers is actually getting students who have an aptitude to be programmers. So, like, we talk about how selective we are, and that's actually true. Some people think it's marketing, but we work really, really hard to filter out, get the very best students we can. And as part of that process, we kind of have aptitude tests for all of you. I know I interviewed some of you, Jordan have interviewed some of you, and we all do things slightly differently, but we have our way of testing aptitude. So when the software engineering crisis was first identified and we realized how difficult it is to hire engineers, people immediately turned to aptitude tests. IBM, one of the biggest, IBM ruled computing for decades, and they actually had something called the IBM PAT, which is a programmer aptitude test. It was administered to, I think it was upwards of 700,000 individuals in just 1 year in the 60s. So you can imagine how many people have been through this selection process. As a result of, or as a way to actually build that aptitude test, a couple of psychologists were hired and they surveyed IBM's engineers, and they actually found only one correlation amongst them, only one strong correlation, which is that they were disinterested in people. So they had an aptitude test that basically selected for white male, mathematically inclined people who didn't like other people. And it became a self-fulfilling prophecy. And this is a quote from a book called The Computer Boys Take Over, which explains it in way more detail. Basically, the primary selection mechanism used by industry selected for antisocial mathematically inclined males, and therefore antisocial mathematically inclined males were overrepresented in the programmer population. This in turn reinforced the popular perception that programmers ought to be male, antisocial, and mathematically inclined, and so on. So before Makers Academy, how many of you knew a programmer? Okay, so it's a good percentage of you. With that in mind, how many of you had the impression before Makers that programmers were white males, mathematically inclined, and socially inept? Yeah, that's pretty worrying, right? Hopefully, though, your time at Makers is showing that that's actually changing.
So I guess it now begs the question, why is this such a problem? Fundamentally, code literacy is a requirement for participation in the digital world. So we're moving forward, you kind of have to be involved or you're going to get left behind. And if we truly believe that the future is in software, then I guess it begs the question of, is it moral to exclude a percentage of the population from participating in building a future that affects everyone? And we have a quote here: the quality, relevance and impact of the products and services output from the technology sector can only be improved by having the people who are building them demographically representative of the people who are using them. And I care about this both as a consumer and a producer of technology. So I want to ask the room now, who's left-handed? So a fair proportion of you. Well, when YouTube rolled out iOS app for uploading videos, 5 to 10% of these videos were uploaded upside down, because the company, or the company's almost exclusive right-handed developer team, didn't account for the needs of the left-handed. Which might seem fairly minor, but you are still excluding a whole section of the population. And if you want to move that forward, then the Health Kit, which is Apple's software for tracking key health metrics, went for a whole year before including the ability to track the menstrual cycle. Now, approximately 50% of the population menstruate, and it's happening like a quarter of your life. And to completely write that out of an entire health app is frankly shocking. And everyone upstairs gets pretty cold, right? We're struggling to regulate the aircon. And many of the US air conditioning systems use the algorithms that were designed in the 1960s for 154-pound males. So if you think about that, it's not taking into account any kind of sort of proportion, well, body proportions, the differences in men and women's stature, in core temperature, those kind of things, just completely written out. You're just designing it for kind of one really minor group of people. Similarly, in 2011, female crash test dummies were only just introduced. Now, if you think about it, technology has been being produced, or these car technologies have been produced for like decades, and you've only just introduced female crash test dummies in 2011. As a result of that, female drivers are 47% more likely to be seriously injured in a crash.
So, why this issue? Why did Makers Academy choose to give a discount to encourage women into tech as opposed to another misrepresented section of the population? Well, frankly, it's a numbers game. Over 50% of the UK population are women, therefore it's by far and large the clearest underrepresented segment of society. And we wanted to do the most good as quickly as we could. So, you know, we would absolutely love to be able to offer a discount to so many different causes, but you know, this seemed to be the most logical place to start. Does anybody understand the difference between positive action and positive discrimination? Okay, so positive action is more about rebalancing the scales. Okay, an example of positive discrimination would be if we said, sorry guys, this is a women-only course. And fundamentally it comes down to the fact that at Makers we want to have the best practices, engineers, and as far as we're concerned, you know, sexism is not something that we want any part of. We really, really believe in diversity, and we really, really want to see an engineering workforce that goes out there, that tests, and are not dicks to each other. So to wind up, Bill Gates was asked by some journalists in Saudi Arabia about their plans to the Saudi Arabian government wanted to be within the top 10 of technology literate companies in I think it was 2010, and they asked him what he thought their chances of doing that were, and his response was, well, if you're not fully utilizing half the talent in the country, you're not going to get too close to the top 10. Does anybody have any questions?
So what else is Makers Academy doing to attract more women, to get more women on the course through the selection process, and to give more, to give women a better time during the course?
That's a good question. So one of the things that I'd really like to invite everybody in the room to do, this is something that we've debated internally as a team at great length, and it's some very impassioned debates. We would really love that. One of the results of this presentation is that we actually crowdsource some better ideas, because when it comes down to it, £500 isn't exactly a huge, you know, for me it wouldn't be a huge incentive if I was already spending that amount of money. It's more of a gesture. If you can think of a better way to encourage more women into through our doors and into tech, then we would love to hear about it. And in the interest of transparency, Makers tries to be a really transparent company. So if you could actually tweet us publicly your suggestions, we feel like really comfortable with that. So I definitely encourage that. In terms of what we're doing, this presentation is hopefully the start of more action. So we're going to be rolling this out in week 1 for every new cohort, so everybody gets this chat.